Welcome to our Chaconne program, part 2. This film was made in Harlem Parish, a church in the Harlem district of Manhattan. If you missed part 1, you can see it on our American Classical Orchestra website. I'm Tom Crawford, the Artistic Director of the American Classical Orchestra. A chaconne is a Renaissance dance. Some of the earliest forms are from Spain, but many other places as well. The original dances were fast and presumably with lots of hip motions and so forth. They were very sensuous. But the chaconne evolved over time, perhaps more significantly than any other dance. And the chaconne became embraced by great composers, the greatest composers, such as we'll hear tonight, Johann Sebastian Bach, Claudio Monteverdi. The feature of the chaconne that remains constant, however, is a repeating figure over and over, usually a bass line. And it can be as few as 4 notes, but it repeats over and over and over. And if not a bass line, then a set of chords, again, perhaps only 4 chords. And this creates a mesmerizing, even hypnotic effect. Any kind of repeating figure in music can change your consciousness. And we are drawn in and we stay in. And you hear that in all of the chaconnes we're doing. Now, by popular demand, we're going to change the program a little bit tonight and start with one of those early chaconnes by Juan Arañés. We used it on part 1. It was the end of part 1, and people loved it so much that we're going to start with it tonight. Please stick around at the end for the question and answer. Thank you very much for tuning in.
y dándose bofetadas a Najate y Oliveros con un sartén de torteros salió esculaco el doctor y la madre del amor puesta en la ley de Bayona y la fama lo pregona a la vida vida vámonos a Chacona, vida vámonos a Chacona, a la vida vida vámonos a Chacona, vida vámonos a Chacona. Y cargo con esas cestas, unas no dando respingos, Juana contigo domingos, salió las bragas enjutas y más de 40 bodas, huyendo de Barcelona, y la fama no pregona, a la vida vámonos a Chacona, vida vámonos a Chacona, a la vida vámonos a Chacona, vida vámonos a Chacona.
Hi, I'm Charlie Weaver, and in this concert I'm playing the Theorbo. The Theorbo is a large member of the lute family. The lute is a plucked instrument that was popular in Europe from the Middle Ages until the end of the 18th century. The Theorbo is the base of the family, so as you can see it has quite a large body, and it has 15 strings. 6 of the strings are tuned sort of like a modern guitar, and the other strings are tuned in a scale. And those are the long strings, and because they're so long, they have a deep resonance that wasn't achievable in any other way with gut strings. So the combination of the long strings and the short strings means that I can play very rich and full chords. And the instrument, being such a chordal instrument, was designed specifically to accompany the human voice in the new style of music that was coming into fashion in the early 17th century. So the Theorbo was invented specifically for the style of music like the Monteverdi piece and the Strozzi piece that we're performing on this concert. And many people at the time thought it was the ideal instrument to accompany the human voice.
Non avea febo ancora recato al mondo in qui, con la donzella fona del cuore al mondo uscì. Sul palidetto volto spargease il suo. Spesso gli vegna sciolto un gran sospir dal cor. Sicca, sicca, sicca,
Good evening. I'm David Larkin, Executive Director of the American Classical Orchestra, and I'm so glad you were able to join us tonight for part 2 of the Chaconne Project. Immediately following this, we will have a Q&A, a live Q&A, with Maestro Thomas Crawford and our excellent musicians from tonight, so please stay tuned and get your questions ready. One of the great joys for me this season has been to watch us transform ourselves from a group that was only used to performing live into one that is able to provide for you a virtual performance as we just did. It's been more than 8 months since we gave our last live concert, or since there were such concerts in New York City. And it was a pleasure for me to be present physically as we put together the program you saw tonight, and to feel the excitement in the room between the musicians who had come together for the first time in months in order to provide for you tonight the excellent music that you just heard. What is true is, for us to remain alive and sustain ourselves and help our musicians continue to contribute to the artistic wellness of our country and the world, we need your help. If you could donate to us, that would be great. There are many ways to do it. There's a donate button at the bottom of the screen where you just watched the video. If you were watching from our own website, you can look in the chat box if you are on Facebook, or go to our website, look for any of the emails we have sent you in the last little while. There's always a support ACO button on the bottom, and we would really appreciate it. You are our future. And if you help us, we can continue to fulfill our mission of bringing you historically informed performances of classical music on period instruments, because that's what the American Classical Orchestra is all about. Now, Maestro Crawford and the musicians, Amanda, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, David, and echoing your welcome and thanks. Thank you to everyone who tuned in this evening. Thank you for spending part of your Friday night with us. As David indicated, the Chaconne Project has been quite a journey for us as an organization, and I think for the musicians as well. I'm so pleased that we have our soloists with us tonight, this wonderful group of artists here to answer your questions. And I'd like to bring in now, along with ACO Director and Founder Thomas Crawford, violinist Chloe Fedor, gambist and cellist Arnie Tanimoto, Charlie Weaver, who played Theorbo and Baroque guitar, and mezzo-soprano soloist Guadalupe Peraza. Thank you all for joining us. If you're joining us via Facebook or YouTube, or even on our website, there's a chat feature in which you can enter your questions. And Guadalupe, can you give an additional greeting to our guests?
Hi, everyone. A little greeting in Spanish, if that's okay. Buenas noches. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en este hermoso proyecto que concluye el día de hoy con esta segunda parte. Los invitamos a formar parte de esta conversación en el idioma de su elección. Si es en español, no hay problema. Aquí lo podemos interpretar con estos fabulosos músicos y miembros de American Classical Orchestra que están hoy con nosotros. Con gusto podemos compartir su participación o sus preguntas. Las pueden dirigir hacia cualquiera de los miembros aquí presentes si nos escriben en la sección de comentarios de esta transmisión o por medio de la página web. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. And Tom, maybe first question for you then. Why did we call this a well-grounded program? What was the reasoning for that? Oh, I think you might be muted, Tom, sorry.
Actually, the original concert was supposed to happen on Groundhog Day. So that's how it started, believe it or not. But a ground bass, a ground round is not something you eat, but in music it does exist, and it's a British term, I guess, for you know, a repeating bass line like in a chaconne. And chaconne can't lay claim to all of the repetitive lines or harmonies. You know, we have passacaglias, we have canons, we have rounds. Everybody knows rounds, Three Blind Mice. So this is a ground round.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. There's such a variety of music across these two programs. One of our listeners said, I'm still not clear on what a chaconne is. Don't many forms have a repeating bass line? Does anybody want to tackle that one to begin with?
I say Charlie because the harmonies and the syncopation of the change of harmony on the second beat.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a difficult question to answer because chaconne was already a loaded term in the 17th and 18th centuries. It meant a lot of different things. But some features that clue one into the fact that you're listening to a chaconne and not some other ground bass include triple meter, syncopated rhythms, and basically a 4-chord pattern. Even if there are more chords, the basic idea is that you have a home chord and then the dominant chord, and then you go somewhere else, and then you come back to the dominant chord. And that basically summarizes what makes it a chaconne, as opposed to other ground basses like the folias, which have a kind of different pattern. They go somewhere else. So you wouldn't mix up a folias and a chaconas. But the chaconne it's basically a catch-all term, which is why even in a program of all chaconnes, there's quite a bit of variety in the harmony and the style.
Yeah, if this had been an all bourrée program, right, Charlie? I mean, we would have lost people within a couple of minutes. No, I mean, I found that I've always felt that the chaconne title, Ciacona, has more variety than any of the other dance forms.
Yeah, it was wonderful to see that variety. And there's an additional question that's sort of along the same lines, and I'm not sure if we can answer this, but do we know how the chaconne bass line of the Arañés became the lament bass line of the Monteverdi, the Bach, other examples?
I guess I could feel that one too. Lamentation in music goes back obviously much further than the 17th century. People have been setting sorrowful and lamenting texts to music probably since as long as there has been human civilization. But there are certain features of lamentation, like a kind of minor mode or a descending half-step sigh figure, which were prominent in the 16th century. And Monteverdi took that and turned it into this 4-note descending thing. And he basically invented that. And the Lamento della ninfa was such an iconic piece that for the rest of the 17th century, that became, if you had those 4 notes in your bass line, it was clear that you were talking about lamentation in your musical setting. And in fact, scholars still call that the lament bass. And that's basically entirely owed to Monteverdi's invention of it.
Really interesting. Thank you, Charlie. And if anybody hasn't read Charlie's program note in the program, please do, because it's very rich with information. I wanted to follow that up. Maybe Arnie, maybe you have some insight into this. Both the Marais that you played on Tuesday and the King Arthur chaconne from Purcell, those are final movements of pieces. Do you know how that convention came about in the French style, or why that might be, or anything further you want to mention about that?
Yeah, I can't say that I know exactly why the chaconne was the end, was sort of the grand finale of operas, but I know what I can say is that dance, especially in countries like France, was super important in the 17th and 18th centuries. And operas consist of not only recitativo and arias, but also essentially dance suites, and ballet was super popular. So I think it's just natural that something as grand as the chaconne would be the finale to most operas in France. And how that relates to Purcell is, especially in the second half of the 17th century, there was the Restoration, where Charles II returned to England, and he had been mostly hiding in, spending his time in France at places like Versailles. So he brought the continental French taste back with him to England, and that's why English operas like Purcell's end in Chaconne's like that.
Thank you. Yeah.
But it's interesting too that the dance and the French go together from day one, and this orchestra has done its fair share of operas by, let's say, lesser composers, and Monsigny, and we did a piece by several operas by André Gretry, contemporary of Mozart's. And when I was looking at the score, which was unpublished, of the first Gretry opera that I did, I noticed that it had a complete ballet within the score. I mean, a complete ballet, 30 minutes of dance music to be choreographed, obviously. And I contacted some scholars in the field, and they told me that by law there had to be a ballet. Did you know that, Charlie?
Yeah, it's at the Paris Opera. A lot of the supporters of the operas were these young cavaliers who had mistresses who belonged to the ballet troupe. So all operas had to have a ballet in the second act. And Wagner ran into trouble with this when he tried to put Tannhäuser on in Paris, because he refused on artistic grounds to add a ballet to the second act. And for that reason, it was a complete flop.
I remember. Wonder why it was the second act.
They didn't like to get there on time.
Yeah, that had to be it.
So
they were
all
busy.
operas had to have a ballet in the second act. And Wagner ran into trouble with this when he tried to put Tannhäuser on in Paris, because he refused.
Pardon me, guys. I had some video problems. We do have a question, just really quick, I'll answer, which is, what was the first piece on the program? That was Juan Arañés's Chacona a la vida, bona. And if you missed it, I think this viewer missed that piece, you can view either the part 1 or part 2 through December 1st. So if you missed any portion of tonight or Tuesday's program, please do go back and view that. And again, apologies for my video mishap. We have a question. Is it likely that any of the composers on this program might have heard each other's music? For instance, did Corelli hear Monteverdi, or was Bach familiar with any of these earlier composers? Oh, Tom, sorry, you're muted again.
There we go. Sorry. I mean, the Strozzi is the same 4-note lament, yes. So she must have studied Monteverdi. And Bach studied everyone. I mean, he knew everything.
We don't necessarily have records that a lot of these composers were familiar with the works of the others, but it's highly likely that, yeah, composers like Monteverdi were just so famous that it's possible that Corelli may have heard his music, or it's also very likely that Bach may have heard Marais' music because Marais was just so famous. And I think it's also important to note that composers, especially in the late 17th century and 18th century, had their music published, so therefore it's more likely that their contemporaries could have heard them.
That's great. And do we know if women, I mean, we know, the question is, did women sing works like Monteverdi and Strozzi in the 17th century? I think we know that they did, but where were they allowed to sing and where were they not allowed to sing? Does anybody know the answer to that? Maybe
You were
Charlie.
not allowed to sing in church.
Great.
Right. In Roman Catholic countries, women were generally not allowed to sing in public church services, with a few notable exceptions. For instance, Francesca Caccini, we know, sang in a Holy Week service in Florence in the early 17th century. But in general, men and women did not sing together in church, which is what makes the madrigal genre so sort of exciting in kind of a secular context. So, you know, these pieces would have been performed in a kind of private chamber setting. Strozzi moved in very kind of high fashion circles. She was extremely famous for her talents, both as a composer and as a singer. And so she would have performed her own songs for sure.
Well, I have a question for Chloe, which I've already asked you in person, but you know, every time I hear that piece, when I get to the end, the tremendous arrival that happens, and that last open string, I mean, what does it feel like to play that piece?
Playing the Bach Chaconne is the ultimate exercise in vulnerability. It's just, you take what's primarily a melodic instrument. We can play chords, but especially in Baroque times, we have a whole team of people, the basso continuo players, keyboard players, pluckers, bowed bass players, cello or gamba, that are providing the harmonic foundation for the music. And Bach's Chaconne is the lament. It's also utilizing the whole span of the instrument, basically start to finish. It's as virtuosic as other pieces, but not a lot of concertos or things are written with the intent to dazzle or something sound harder than they are, but there's sort of this unforgiving challenges and profundity to this particular work. And the fact that it doesn't rely on something like sonata form, something that has action, and that it's intense inherently in the fact that it goes from point A to develop in some way and then return. Bach manages to still have that complete scope and range of emotions and get an intensification, but within this, what's by definition a repetitive form. So I think his ability to do that, it's both, it's dramatic, but not in the way that some things are just action based. It's more like the psychological turmoil. I found parallels between what we're all going through now, because we have a limited range of what we can do day to day. We don't necessarily go as far and have outward obvious means of action in our daily lives, and yet we're so wrought with such intensity of emotions and dealing with so much that I found there really wasn't anything I can think of that was more appropriate for the time. So it was exhausting. It's exhausting just to watch, even when I'm not playing it on this particular day. So yeah, it's a journey. And what you said, Tom, about the Chaconne being hypnotic, I think that's true. And yeah, just sort of suspended in time, but also really relying on time. It's interesting, and it will change every time we play it and go back to approaching the piece.
And Charlie referred to the iconic reputation of the Monteverdi Lament. You feel the same way, Guadalupe?
About
actually performing the piece, you know, how much you get caught up in it, and like it's a moment in history when you perform it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is a mesmerizing piece, and it's I just love it, and it is challenging, and it's very interesting. It has polyphony and also the one melody on top, and this quality of having kind of a Greek chorus with the man describing what's happening and narrating the story of what's happening to this poor nymph who is suffering from betrayal, maybe even in such an extreme way that could be even humoristic, maybe, I don't know. Maybe there is some sarcasm there from Monteverdi, but it's so much pain, so much suffering. And we can relate to that. We can make fun of that. We can also relate to that. And here's the male chorus emphasizing all the pain during the music. So it's a lot of fun, and it's also there's also a lot of connection and everything that Chloe just mentioned. That there's all of that at the same time happening.
Well, it's interesting. You asked me about changing the pitch, and I didn't think twice about it or blink an eye, because we transpose things all the time to fit the singer. I mean, it's just a given. It's been that way since I was a child. But I think that when you take a great piece like this and you lower the pitch to match your voice, what do you think, Charlie? That's when you're playing it, having played it so many times in another key.
Well, the question of transposition to suit the singer's voice is one that we have solid evidence for. Giulio Caccini published a very famous and influential treatise on how to sing in this style right around the year 1600. And he said, one of the things he said is that you always need to play it in whatever key will make the singer sound best. So absolutely, transposition is, not only an option, it's really the best option from a historical point of view.
I am thankful for that, so that you can give the best of yourself. Not every voice lives in the same place, and some things are written for specific people. So thank you for letting me do this where my voice lives, because I love this music, and I can be much more expressive when I'm more comfortable with the music. So thank you so much.
Well, we musicians have sensitivity to keys. And to me, G minor is a little warmer than A minor, which I see as a little more steely. But
we just have different instruments. Some different singers are different instruments, I think. So we can fit them. Sorry, Amanda.
Oh, no, not at all. This is really all very interesting. Now, Guadalupe, not only did you sing during the Arañés, but you also played percussion. And we had some questions like, is that something that you've done a lot of? How much preparation did it take to be able to do both things at once? We had Charlie playing 2 instruments, Arnie playing 2 instruments. Of course, Chloe's taking on this gigantic piece. Everybody had their own sort of difficult things going on during this program, but we're just out of curiosity. We had a question about that.
Well, I had a little bit of experience playing the spoons because I had participated in some, produced and also participated as a musician in some Irish concerts, that I put together with Mexican music, some jarocho. And I played the spoons with them. I learned the spoons with the Irish musicians recently, actually fairly recently. And I thought, well, this is I had a coaching, a few coachings with a great percussionist, Josafat Larios from Mexico, to ask what can we add to this music to make it as close as possible to the cross-cultural situation that this shows. And he suggested African instrumentation. I don't want to say, I just want to show you something without saying much and see if you can hear this. I hope you can hear it. Is it? Un sábado de la Chacona se hizo el mes de las rosas, tuvo millares de cosas y la fama lo So this is, I'm just putting it together. This is music from Morocco. This is an axiom released by Ganawa Music of Marrakesh. And they were kind enough to let us share it here with you. And the meter of this African music is a cycle of 12 beats. And it's just like the Arañés, the 12 beats. So the theory is that this music probably started off in Latin America, absorbing the rhythms and the music from other cultures, including African culture, that we were all getting together through things that were happening, some unfortunate things in history, as I mentioned last time, maybe like some slavery traffic and some conquers that happened and ended up having a lot of communities together. So we all shared the music, and it became, some of the music became something like this piece. So we thought it was appropriate to add percussion, not only African percussions. We had a bendir that Michael Harris played here with us. And we also had some castanets that had the Spanish influence, and some of the percussions that we used also have Native American, were used to Native American, Native Latin American communities, sorry. So that's why we chose it, and I had to work a lot. I had to practice a lot to make it happen as soon as possible so that this could work, and I hope it went well.
Yeah, I wonder if we can maybe, just to sort of close things up, like maybe each of us can talk about something that was particularly poignant or something you enjoyed especially about this project, a piece that you hadn't known before, just some touchstone about this project that you'll take away from the experience. Maybe starting with Arnie, if you don't mind.
I can't think of a particular piece, but for me, just being able to do this project was just really nice, just given what we've all been going through, and how many things have been canceled. Just to be able to make music with other people, and to have it recorded so nicely, it was just such a wonderful opportunity, and I'm really grateful for the experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree. It was such a wonderful confluence of circumstances that we were able to do this. So Chloe, do you have anything that you wanted to, any takeaways from?
I certainly also, that having the opportunity to play with other people, and we're in a sense we're energy workers. We feed off of, even though there wasn't an audience there, we're playing chamber music with each other, and that was really stimulating, and just sort of a reminder of why we do what we do. And especially the ACO audience is so connected. In general, I felt like I also knew to whom this was going to be presented in a way. So also feeling that closeness, and being in such a gorgeous space, just seeing a physical space and feeling like it was not something to be feared. I guess we're all sort of fleeing from being indoors. I mean, things are different now, and if you're in your own home, that's one thing, but to take solace and want to fill a space instead of maybe fearing a space. I thought there was something poignant about just being in a physical structure that you can be really be in awe of, and kind of lean into that experience instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah, and we did have a question about that. We were at Harlem Parish on 118th Street. That's the location, Harlem Parish, not Harlem Chapel. Charlie, do you have anything you'd like to add for a final thought about the project?
Yeah, I mean, all the music is wonderful. I think the Strozzi was particularly affecting, and part of that is that Guadalupe shared with us some of what she's been going through in her life, and it was just very cathartic to be able to kind of connect musically. I second everything that Arnie and Chloe have said about the kind of isolation that we've all been going through, and that kind of connection. I mean, music is just, it's the most powerful force for good in the world. So
yeah, I mean that the text of Barbara Strozzi and Monteverdi that we sang, is related to loss. And in this case, it's related to romantic loss, but we can connect to any kind of loss. It's so much sorrow, so much sadness. We just lost a member of the community on Wednesday, of the choral community, BJ. Probably some of our members of our community are now listening. I would like to honor her today, if it's okay. And we have so much loss this year because the situation has been difficult. I lost my father. We have lost a lot of people through the pandemic and the complications of the pandemic. So this concert, I think, honors all of the people who we lost through the process. And I'm very thankful that we were able to share it and to play all together. Music is hope to many of us, and I think it can be hope to a lot of people. So I hope that we can keep on doing it no matter what.
Hey, Amanda, you're muted.
Yeah, Guadalupe, of course, condolences as always on the loss of your father. That's a loss that can't really be enumerated or spoken and made sense of in words. And we also, as an orchestra, lost two of our members over the summer, Judson and Karen, and they were definitely on our minds, I know, as we were going through this. Tom, do you have any final thoughts?
One quick light one that you maybe make you grin. I guess this is a director's point of view, but even though we were all kept studying music and playing and singing all these days that we had to ourselves, I had a little piece of me that was worried if we could still do this, when we'd come back together and perform. Now, one of the singers did say to me, I'm kind of rusty. You're asking for too much here. But I was just a little nervous that when we put it together, it would be out of tune and, we'd have forgotten how to play together. But it took all of 5 seconds. But I also might mention for, posterity that we were all tested and we were not wearing masks because we required ourselves to keep distancing. So someday when people are looking back at this film, they may find it odd that the Theorbo player was 10 feet away from the gambist in playing the Marais. And this was for our own safety. So it's really a moment in time, this project.
Yes, and speaking of this particular moment in time, as we're approaching Thanksgiving next week, I think there's a lot to be grateful for in this project, in having this time together, in what we were able to produce, and also just the ability to share this with the audience. And I know I'm grateful. Thank you to each and every one of you, to all the people that helped us put this together, which are too many to number. Thank you also to WQXR for allowing us to cross-post this. So thank you to the audience who might be watching through them. And with that, unless anybody else has anything else to say, I think we can say good night and many thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.